Greetings, everyone. Dale Parrish, COS Indiana Live host, along with my co-host, Mr. Ken Kashuba, our state communications coordinator. Hi, Ken. How you doing?
Hi, Dale. Doing pretty good. Yourself?
Good, good. Well, Ken, we got a big lineup tonight. I want to get right going on it here. So, folks, Ken will be monitoring our comments and questions from any viewers. So, if you're viewing through Facebook or through our YouTube channel, feel free to drop us a comment or a question, and we'll try our best to address it. So, Ken, how about giving us a little brief rundown on that QR code up there
All
in the
right.
upper right-hand corner, according to my screen?
Yeah. Well, you've always got one of those backward screens, so it's kind of
Oh,
fits in
mine's a backward screen, huh? Okay.
backward screen, but that's okay. I'll let people know that QR code, wherever it shows up on their screen, is the way that they can subscribe to our channel. And with that subscription, you can access a lot of the educational material, a lot of the interviews and different video broadcasts that we've done. You can access them there, along with some stuff that you can't get it anywhere else. So there's some exclusive material there, and we always invite people to just show their support. That little barcode there with your camera will get you a place to put your name and email address. We don't send out emails. Maybe once a quarter we might send out an email, but we don't email you regularly. We leave that channel open for you to visit at your will. So subscribe and show your support. And we're not even asking for money. So, it's one of those unusual things where you get it for free and we don't even hound you. So
maybe we should ask for money. What the heck?
yeah,
No, we can't do that.
I think once the political season's over and my email gets stopped being filled up with, hey, contribute emails, maybe we could do that.
That's unbelievable, isn't it? Yeah, mine too.
Probably get $5 an hour. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Ken.
Yep.
Well, Ken, we haven't heard from Gary Harbaugh on debt avalanche in a while. So let's start off this evening with another installment that he sent us on the debt clock that he's been working on. And I think he's going to be talking about the money supply section of that debt clock. There's so much information there. I've asked Gary to kind of go through it section at a time. So let's take a look at what he's got for us this evening on the debt clock. And I think, like I said, I believe it's the money supply section. So let's take a look at this.
Sounds good.
Hi, it's Gary. Ready with the next installment on the USA debt clock. I've blown this really big. You can see on the left-hand side, we start at the top. We're going to scroll down. We're just going to look at a couple numbers here, right here, kind of in the middle of the screen. The M2 money supply and the M2 money supply in 2000. If you look at that, you can see it's more than 4 times larger today than it was in 2000. Those numbers are changing on the bottom, I think, because it is showing the pace of the growth of money supply in 2000 as well as today. So the money supply is up about 4 times higher than it was. If you remember from the last debt avalanche video, I showed you how the price of housing, the median new price, home price went from about 167,000 to over 400, about 402,000. And the reason that's possible, the reason that could go on, and the engine in effect driving prices higher is this money supply. So the Fed creates more money. The Fed has to create more money because government spending is out of control. So let's think about who that benefits. Well, it has benefited homeowners if they already owned a home. But if they couldn't buy a home, it's been tough sledding. It has been tremendously beneficial to people who own financial assets. The Standard & Poor's 500 stock index is more than 4 times higher today than it was in 2000. So whenever there's excess money, supply growth, that money always goes somewhere. And typically it goes into either housing or financial assets or both. In a low interest rate environment in particular, it goes into housing. And that's why housing has become almost unaffordable for people who are not, you know, honestly wealthy or close to it. So let's talk about where this money has gone in terms of who has gotten it. This is total assets held by the top 0.01%. That's 1 out of 10,000 people. Back in 1990, the assets held by the top 1/100th of 1% was about $1.8 trillion. It's over 30 years ago, almost 35 years ago, 1.8 trillion. If that had simply grown with inflation, then today it would be up to about $4.3 trillion. Not bad, big growth, but nothing like what has actually happened. This blue line shows you the growth of the assets held by the top 1 out of every 10,000 people. It grew nicely during the dot-com bubble, blew up during the housing bubble, took a big dive when housing kind of collapsed, but then it's done almost nothing but go up since. It was about 20 trillion in the third quarter of 2023. It's probably more like 21.5 trillion today, I believe. So you can see growth in the money supply has produced incredible wealth by the very top of the bubble, the very top 0.01%. 1 out of every 10,000 people has really benefited from this. So here's what I want you to think about. The government is really working well, great for people at the very, very top. But is it working for the average person? No, it's not. That's why we need a convention of states to rein in the government, put limits on spending, drag the government back down to the size it was intended to be so that it works for everybody and not just the very top. So that's the next installment on the debt avalanche, that talking about the growth in the money supply. There's much more on this this graphic that you can study and learn from. But just know this: growing money supply is caused by or is forced by excessive federal spending, and that's a reflection of the fact that the government is too big, tries to do too many things, and that's why we need a convention of the states.
Very interesting.
He is. I tell you, I'm so glad he's doing these. We've got some more. He's got some others prepared for us. He's going to eventually go through that entire clock. So I think we'll all be learning a lot here. Is your house worth over $400,000 now?
Oh, heck no.
No, mine isn't either. So, but anyway, that'd be nice if it was.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly a nice. I mean, it's true what they say. It is probably your best investment over the years. I mean, when I think of what it was 30 years ago,
Right.
yeah. I mean but it's certainly not $400,000.
All right. Okay, let's move on. Well, as you all know, we've been with the help of one of our contributors, Wendy Olson. We've been dealing with various January 6th people and organizations. And Wendy's been bringing this to us in her series called Pillars of Freedom. So we've got another one for you tonight, and we're going to introduce you to a man that has been a prisoner, a J6 prisoner. He's out now, but the ordeal is not over with him. And his name is Larry Brock, Lieutenant Colonel Larry Brock Jr. So we're going to be presenting to you part one tonight. and I'll explain this in the recording that I'm going to give you. But we're going to do this in 3 parts. Part 1 tonight deals with what he did on January 6th. So he goes through it very good, very thoroughly, and I think you'll find it very interesting. But first, he's going to introduce himself in a video that he prepared himself. He recorded in 2023. So I think you'll enjoy meeting Larry, and hope you enjoy this first part in our interview with Lieutenant Colonel Larry Brock Jr. So here we go. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another series, another installment of our Pillars of Freedom series, brought to us by Wendy Olson. And we have for you today, as you have already seen, or you will soon see, is a video introducing our guest. And this is Lieutenant Colonel Larry Brock. He will be introducing himself to you in this video, and I think you'll find it very interesting. In this first part, we've got 3 parts to go with Larry here, and in this first part, Larry is going to introduce himself to you and also tell you what happened on January 6th, where he was. He's even got some video in this video that he's recorded. And I think you'll find it very interesting, and he'll walk you through where he was and what he did on January 6th. And after the video, then I'm going to bring Larry on live, and we'll let Larry make any additional comments that that he wants to add to this. The video was made in 2023, so some things have happened since then. And I'm going to let him make some additional comments on this. So hope you enjoy this video, and we'll be right back with you.
My name is Lieutenant Colonel Larry Brock. I'm a retired United States Air Force officer. I served for over 24 years, and I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I've always felt like I had to give something back to the country. I am 4th generation American military. I went to the Air Force Academy. I was fortunate enough to finish in the top of my class. I had the opportunity to protect friendly troops in Afghanistan and risk my life doing it, and it is the highlight of my life. The thing that I took most from my military service was a letter that was sent home where a man said that I get to go home to my wife and daughter because you were there. I've loved my country since childhood. As a matter of fact, my first wife once asked me, if it came down to a choice of betraying me or your country, which would you choose? And I said, well, I've loved you for 2 years. I've loved the United States all my life. I am very much a patriot. I would give my life in a heartbeat for this country. And the president asked us to be there. I believe that he thought a strong showing of patriots outside the Capitol would embolden certain members of the Republican Party to try and send the election back to the states. Now, I had purchased and brought personal protective equipment. PPE is the military term for it. The reason I brought that is there had been many disturbances where BLM or Antifa had attacked Trump supporters over the previous year, and I wanted to be personally safe. I had just come from a period in Iraq and Afghanistan where we were required to wear that. For example, on the day that the missiles hit Al-Assad Air Base in Iraq, I was there. Prior to that, we had been wearing Kevlar and helmets for days. So it's sort of second nature in a dangerous environment to me to be wearing personal protective equipment. When I got to the Capitol, there were absolutely no barriers. All of the bike racks, all of the, I'm going to call it ski fencing, because I think that's how the government describes it, had been removed. There were probably about 500,000 people there. We've subsequently learned after my trial that there were undercover MPD officers that were yelling, "Go, go, go." They were literally right next to me in that same location. MPD is Metropolitan Police Department. I walked up the scaffolding onto the grounds outside the Capitol on the west side. There were 4 police officers in riot gear standing outside of a door, and not one of them spoke up to any of the protesters that were walking into the building. I walked through a set of open doors. Now, there were people entering the windows that were on either side, but I'll be honest with you, I didn't see them. I'd like you to imagine going into a sporting event. When you're walking through your turnstile, if you will, showing your ticket, you don't really see the people that are on the other side of you. I did not see that people were crawling through windows. From there, I sort of followed the crowd. There's a small rotunda. In that small rotunda, I saw that there were some articles of litter, I think a candy wrapper, a protein bar wrapper, and maybe a water bottle. I actually picked those up and put them in the trash can. I walked through a hallway, and when I emerged from this hallway right in front of the Senate gallery, I saw a man that was chasing someone. It was an African-American man in a coat and tie. I've subsequently learned that was Officer Nairobi Timberlake, and he was being chased by a man that had previously assaulted him. I stopped another protester from chasing Officer Timberlake, and then I got in the way of the man that had assaulted Officer Timberlake and said no. And then I held my arms out to Officer Timberlake and said go. You can see the aftermath of that in some of the video, but the government is continuing to withhold the video of me physically grabbing the protester that was trying to chase him. From there, I went into the upper Senate gallery and I told the crowd to be respectful. I did not want Trump supporters to be perceived in the same light that Antifa and BLM were being perceived in. So I told people, again, to be respectful, to not damage anything.
How do we get down there? How do we get down there? How do we get down there? I don't know. Go back down the stairs and keep those doors.
Remember, patriots! Nobody destroys anything.
Yeah, respect.
I left and I walked down around a corner and I saw a set of keys on a desk. I went and tried to use those keys, several of them, to open a locked door. I wish I hadn't done that, but that's what I did. And when the keys didn't work, I just put the keys back on the desk exactly where I found them. Didn't try and kick the door down, didn't do anything destructive at all. I walked downstairs and there's the entrance to the actual Senate is right there. I saw that the doors were open and a man was sitting in Vice President Pence's chair. I walked into the actual Senate chamber itself and told him to get out of the Vice President's chair, as it doesn't belong to him, it belongs to the Vice President. I also caution people to be respectful and not to destroy anything.
Get out of that chair.
No, this is our chair.
I agree with you, brother, but it's not ours. It belongs to the Vice President of the United States when he's in here. It's not our chair. Look, I love you guys, you're brothers, but we can't be disrespectful.
Don't disrespect. They can steal an election, but we can't sit in their chair.
No, we're not putting up with that either.
I know much has been made about the zip ties that I was seen with inside the Senate. At one point, I walked around a corner and there was a crowd confronting officers. I believe they were Capitol Police, but I'm not sure. And so I started walking around that crowd, and at one point I stepped on a zip tie. Knowing that it would be safe with me and that nothing could be done with it that would hurt anyone, I picked it up. So I went a few more steps and I picked up a second zip tie. I picked it up because I knew it would be safe with me, that nothing untoward could be done with it. I walked around with it. I had them in my hands. At one point, I walked right by 7 or 8 police officers and had them in my hands. They didn't ask for them. And then I left with them, and once I was back in my hotel room, I disposed of them. The video shows that I did not enter with the flex cuffs. The video shows that I picked up the flex cuffs. The video shows that I walked right by police officers holding them out in the open, and they didn't say anything. So I wasn't trying to hide them. I didn't bring them. I made sure that nothing untoward could be done with them. After that, I wanted to leave. I approached a Metropolitan police officer in full riot gear and asked him, hey, where's the nearest store out? He said, I'll escort you there. So I walked with him. Now, this is a video that the government has not supplied to us We're trying to get a hold of it. We would like to have subpoenaed the officer so that he could testify that I was peaceful and cooperative, but the government did not provide that evidence. He escorted me behind a line of policemen, either 8 or 10 police officers, and the crowd was trying to push its way in. I waited until the officer told me to go through their line of officers, and you'll see me in the video going by to the right side. It's actually the left on the video. And then there was a man that was confronting the officers. He was shirtless, and I recall putting my arms around him, telling him, "Stop, don't do this, it's time to leave." And then you see me escorting him away. You know, there's a lot of memory tricks that can happen, which is why police find eyewitnesses to be fairly unreliable. But I will say that almost everything that I recall, we can now support via video. And the things that haven't been produced on video, I believe, will support that as well. I was not violent the entire time I was there. There is video that shows that I acted to protect the police, that I acted to obey law enforcement. I did not destroy anything when I was there. I did not go through any barricades or closed doors that did not think that I was allowed to go through on that day. I am not a member of any militia. I flew to Washington, D.C. alone. I left Washington, D.C. alone, and I had no association with anybody that was there. I knew it was going to be bad pretty much as soon as I got to my hotel room and turned on the TV and saw what I saw. I'm going to reiterate, not one man or woman that went to protest on January 6th brought a weapon. I didn't even bring a pocket knife because I didn't even want the perception that I might have had a weapon. The greatest measure of a man's intent are his actions. And my actions on that day were to protect police, were to peacefully and patriotically protest. Now, overall, in terms of J6, we now know that there are 41,000 hours, of which we've been told only 14 has been released to defendants. I think it's very important to have the opportunity to tell my story before I'm imprisoned, because I don't believe the true story of January 6th has emerged at all. The government has controlled the narrative carefully and continues to do so. And I wanted the American people to see that the narrative they spun about me personally is not borne out by the video that they have and that they're hiding from you. I ask that every American contact their congressman or congresswoman and ask for the full release of the January 6 videos so that you, the American people, can see what transpired on that day. Demand that they be held accountable and that they release the video to you.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Hope you enjoyed that video, and I think you have a little bit better understanding of who Colonel Larry Brock Jr. is. So let me bring Larry on and introduce him to you live. Hi, Larry.
How are you today, sir?
Just fine, just fine. Larry, I'm calling you Colonel Larry Brock. Are you Lieutenant Colonel?
Yes, sir. I was a lieutenant colonel in the United States Air Force.
See,
yes,
I
sir.
gave you a promotion, and
there you
go. So, and you certainly deserved it.
Well, thank you.
Well, Larry, we as you know, we just got to see the video that you put together for everyone in 2023 about your day on January 6th. So I know you've probably had some thoughts and some things happen since you made that video. So I'm going to let you just kind of fill everybody in as to what has transpired or what you want to add to that video that you maybe didn't know about at that time that you made it.
Well, when I made the video, there were some things that we were starting to wonder about. You know, there were specifically federal involvement in January 6th. And things that have come out subsequent to that is the J5 pipe bombers. In other words, the people that planted the pipe bombs that were to serve as a distraction to pull Capitol Police away from the Capitol. They sort of know who that guy is, but they're making no effort really to capture him.
So those were intended to draw attention away from what was happening at the Capitol building, right?
Yes, sir. They were actually supposed to theoretically detonate at 12:40, but they were discovered in time for the Capitol Police to react to pull sources away.
Okay.
I talk in there about the ski fencing being removed. The man that is on camera doing that, again, he's not been found. I didn't bring up the people that built the gallows, but you would think that the FBI would put some priority into finding people that had actually built a gallows.
You would think so. I had another prisoner talk about the gallows,
but yes, sir, there's absolutely no evidence of that. And I can tell you from my time as a reconnaissance pilot, they have them isolated at an early morning time period where we could easily cell phone track them to see what they were doing then. Now, something I learned just the other day was that there was actually military signaling involved in the attack on the Capitol. Now, Ray Epps led the initial breach. He was merely charged with one misdemeanor, and honestly, that's a placeholder. His hand is on a bicycle rack being pushed into policemen. Every other man on that has a hand on that bicycle rack has been charged with assault, but not Ray Epps. Now, Ray Epps, that was just one of the initial breaches. At the second breach, it coincides with yellow smoke being popped off. All right. While I was inside the Capitol, there was also a flare, a signal flare that went up over the Capitol to signal to somebody to do something.
These flares, these were above the Capitol building you're talking
about? Yes, sir. There's a movie called The War on Truth.
Oh, yes, yes.
And it distinctly shows this military signaling flares that are going on. And then something that I've personally seen on a battlefield is red smoke being popped and friendly forces rapidly egressing. You'll see that as well. Ray Epps, who claims to have been alone, you'll see 4 men ahead of him and 4 behind him, directly leading him as fast as they can go away from the Capitol. Again, all of that's there. Now, something I just learned this past week, and my lawyer and I are still tracking down, a couple of January 6th defendants that were inside the DC gulag with a man named Matthew DeGraves claimed that he admitted to them that he was sent to the Capitol by the federal government to cause trouble on January the 6th.
Is that right?
You're saying, why is he relevant? Remember in the video that you just saw, the man that I stopped from assaulting Officer Nairobi Timberlake?
Yes.
That's Matthew DeGraves. Now, my attorney is working with his attorney to see if we can actually talk. And the reason for that is I am not allowed as a convicted felon still to speak with other felons. But I would like to hear this man's story and find out if what 5 people have signed a piece of paper that says he is a federal informant and a federal agent on January the 6th. I'd like to find out if he's willing to testify to that.
Interesting. Interesting. Yes. Yes.
Forgive me, sir. I'm just getting over a cold, so I apologize for coughing.
No problem. No problem.
All right. So those are the things that are of interest to me. I'm due for resentencing still on the 1st of November. So those things all have a bearing, I think, on the emerging story of federal involvement on January the 6th.
Okay. Larry, I know in the video you mentioned about 41,000 feet of video that had not been released. What's the update on that?
All right, sir. Well, it's hours. 41,000 hours of video. No, that's okay. And even though successive Republican speakers of the House have promised to release that video, they have not done it. They will not release all the video. And so we see, I'm going to call it protection, because Representative Higgins directly confronted Director Wray of the FBI that he has evidence that there were FBI agents inside the Capitol dressed in MAGA gear prior to the Ray Epps-led breach. Now, how is the government going to explain that? How are they going to explain having FBI agents dressed in MAGA gear inside the Capitol prior to the Ray Epps breach? And so we need that videotape released. Again, I want the story to come out. It's not that I have some giant axe to grind. It's just that I believe the American people are being willfully and deliberately misled by an agency that we should have absolute trust in, and that is the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and honestly, the entirety of the Department of Justice.
Okay. All right, Larry, we're out of time here for this part. I want to thank you for coming on and talking to us and giving us an update on this. Hopefully you'll hang on here and we'll get to part 2 momentarily.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you very much, Larry. Wow, pretty interesting, huh?
I don't know how you can listen to a gentleman who has a background that's such as his and look at just the video that he's able to show and not think there was something totally fishy going on.
Oh yeah. Well, you wait till we air part 2 and 3. You're going to hear a lot more from Larry. It's raises more questions than anything, I guess. That's all I can say.
I think we a good bit of people that take a good common sense approach and look at all that we do know and know that it's not, there's something askew and it's not right.
Right.
I hope some of that video does get released.
I do too. Well, let's move on. I wanted to bring to you part 2 of my interview with Stephanie Nutter on who counts the votes. And Stephanie is she's an amazing young lady, and I think a very, very intelligent young lady. Now, this is part 2. She gave us in part 1 what her research discovered in Morgan County. Now she's going to tell us in part 2 what she thinks we can do, and I think you're going to find it very interesting. So this is a Zoom call that I did with her. She's got another PowerPoint to show everyone, so let's get to that right now. Well, greetings, everyone. Dale Parrish, COS Indiana Live once again. Well, we're back with you again today with this amazing young lady that we have come across, Stephanie Nutter. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi.
And we're going to continue with our interview regarding who counts the votes. And if you recall, in part 1, we told you that the articles that she has written on this topic, who counts the votes, can be found on the Morgan County Correspondent newspaper website. And you look under the opinion part of the menu, and you'll find, if you go back to August, you'll find Stephanie's articles that she has written. But we've asked Stephanie to kind of go through the PowerPoints that she has presented. We've already gone through part 1, where she described how she came upon this topic and what got her interested in it. And now, and she shared with us her research that she did to find out about who really does count the votes. And now in part 2, she's going to tell you what she thinks you can do as an individual. So this ought to be very interesting. And so I want to let Stephanie take it away. And Stephanie, get started. You got it.
Okay. Thank you, Dale. Thank you for having me. So up on the screen, we'll start with the first one we started with last time, the election integrity, just as a refresher. Election is the internal, free, and spontaneous separation of one thing from another without compulsion, consisting in intention and will. And that's really important, the intention and will. Our vote is our property, and we intend it to be used as we cast it. So that's our intention. Our will for our vote is to be utilized as we cast it.
That's very important. I know you stressed that in part 1, quite a bit, and I think that's good to remind people about. That's very good. Good.
Thanks, Dale. And integrity is wholeness, entireness, or an unbroken state. So when we're talking about election integrity, we're talking about upholding the intention of our vote as it's cast, keeping it in its wholeness and in an unbroken state as it's intended. And so the question becomes, what do we do? What do we do about this when we come to realize that there isn't integrity in our elections, that our votes might not be being counted as decisively or intentionally as we intended them to be counted? What do we do? One thing a friend told me a while back, which really resonated with my spirit, she made a comment that nothing is greater than that which created it. And I dubbed this the hierarchy of creation, and was in prayer over this and realized the importance of this hierarchy of creation is the idea that the constitutions, the United States Constitution, the Indiana State Constitution, these constitutions don't give the people their rights. Our Creator has given us our rights. And nothing is greater than that which created us. Well, here's the thing. We created our government. We created our Declaration of Independence. We created our constitutions. We created the positions with which elected servants, representatives are filling, and we created the duties for them to fulfill. And so with that hierarchy of creation understanding, it also flows into the order of the way things come out in these documents as well. So the preambles are extremely important in the Constitution. They come first before anything else because it sets the intention of that document. And so in the United States Constitution, we see here that we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union and to establish and do all of these wonderful things, and mostly to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, our children and our grandchildren, posterity, that the word secure comes before blessings of liberty. And this is extremely important to understand because it shows that all future references to power granted in the Constitution are considered non-exclusionary to the powers maintained by the people. Now, what does that mean? It means that in Article 1, Section 1 of the Constitution, when we grant the legislature power to enact laws, that's non-exclusionary. It doesn't mean that we're giving up that power. It means we're delegating that power for them to do as is instructed in the Constitution.
Okay, right. Okay.
Okay. So then the Indiana State Constitution is one of the better state constitutions that I've read. It's really been maintained very well, not tampered with. And we start with the preamble. To the end that justice be established, public order maintained, and liberty perpetuated, we, the people of the state of Indiana, grateful to Almighty God for the free exercise of the right to choose our own form of government, to ordain this Constitution. And here we see in the Bill of Rights of the Indiana State Constitution is Article 1. And everything under Article 1 is considered the Bill of Rights in the Indiana State Constitution. And here we see that we say, for the advancement of these ends, the people have at all times an indefeasible right to alter and reform their government. And indefeasible means not to be defeated or made null or void. So never are we to be defeated in our right to alter and reform our government at all times. Well, what does at all times mean? Does it mean when our commissioners decide to pass something, or when our state legislators decide to pass something or decide to hear us? What exactly does at all times mean? And it's something I think that for several years now, those of us interested in the language of the Constitution have looked for different remedies that we can use when we find something or feel something in our spirit isn't quite right or isn't quite operating as it should. So reading the language of the Indiana State Constitution we had covered this in our last our part one, but I think it's important just to look at one really quickly again. Article 2, Section 13 says all elections by the people shall be by ballot, and all elections by the General Assembly shall be viva voce, which
Right.
means by living voice.
Right.
When you take the intention of this article in its whole wording, what you see here is that we, the people, are able to hold our legislators, our state legislators and representatives accountable and verify their vote by seeing them in person, using their voice. We can see them in person, we hear their voice, we know the intention behind their vote. What we're saying in this first part is that elections are by the people, by ballot. And what this means, the word by, when you really dig in and look these words up, by means the identifying agent performing an action. And since we know that the Supreme Court has ruled that institutions mean what they say, when it says by the people, it means by the people, not by machines, not by a third-party contractor. It means by people so that we make sure, again, our intention is being used as we've willed it. It's decisively counted. So going to the polls and casting your vote is not where our job ends. Our job has just begun, and our job continues on to make sure that our intention and our will is done as we've cast it. So then we get to the next Article 2, Section 1, and this really starts off the suffrage section of the Indiana State Constitution really well and super simple. All elections shall be free and equal, period. It's the easiest, simplest sentence, and yet there's a lot wrapped up in these words free and equal. Here's the definition, free and equal. Free means that a person is entitled, and a person entitled to vote should have a reasonable opportunity to do so and a reasonable manner of doing so. The word reasonable means just, proper, or appropriate to the end in view. In other words, the word free here is saying that, and just means moral, by the way, morally whole and proper. So a reasonable opportunity, a reasonable manner to vote in a free election is saying that it's upholding your intention to have your appropriate ballot, your votes cast with the end in view that you had, your intention. It's upholding your intention. Equal means that every vote cast should have its decisive effect, meaning that the impact of your vote should count as intended. So free is upholding intention, equal is upholding the act itself as a whole act. And then really quickly, Article 2, Section 14, it's very clear. General elections shall be held on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. So one day, hand-counted paper ballots, all elections by the people, by ballot, one day, first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. And you'll see maxim of law, and those are fundamental principles of law that you can support your statements. So there was a Supreme Court ruling that came out in 1803, which rings true and is cited several times. Marbury versus Madison, a law repugnant to the Constitution is void. And that means that any laws that are created that are inconsistent with the Constitution, as we saw in Part 1, are immediately null and void. But still, what do we do? So an understanding of the oath of office is important. An oath is a contract. An oath made between elected servants or representatives and the people is a contract between both parties. One, that they will hear our instruction and follow it. Two, that they will follow it as intended as they take their oath to the Constitution. So maxims of law, one more time. These are fundamental principles of law, which are upheld as such in a court of law. And they find their origin in ancient documents, in biblical principles. They're proverbs. We understand that there's a difference between what's lawful and what is legal. What is lawful is an umbrella term, and legal falls underneath it. And so oftentimes we go to our county commissioners meetings or we go to our city council and we hear parroted in our ear, well, we're following all of the statutes. We're following all of the statutes. But if the statutes were written and they're inconsistent with the Constitution, they're null and void. In other words, they might be legal, but they're not lawful because your Constitution is your highest form of law. The remedy then is a lawful notice. Anybody can write a lawful notice. A lawful notice is a document which is used to inform our elected representatives, our elected servants, that, hey, we've noticed that there's some things happening here which are inconsistent with the language of the Constitution as intended. We notify them that this has happened. We make them aware that there's a breach of contract if they continue practicing the things that we've notified them are not consistent with that Constitution. And we give them a time period to come back and say, okay, we understand that and we'll remedy that. A sworn affidavit is the second thing that goes along with the lawful notice. So first is submitted a lawful notice, timeline given for them to respond, and then an affidavit, a sworn affidavit from you saying that what you've given to them is truthful. These two documents combined act together to show intention. So they show intention, they convey knowledge of malice and maladministration, and they support future practices as acts completed to defraud the people. In other words, once you have made an elected servant aware through lawful notice and affidavit that what they're doing is inconsistent with the Constitution, and they, in breach of contract, continue to do those acts are now actionable items seen in malice and build the case for maladministration. And when there's maladministration, we know that they're acting outside of their oath of office. So these are some resources that I found extremely helpful when researching lawful notices, how to write them, what to use, what to put in them. And then my most important advice I could ever end with is be in prayer before, after, and during what you're doing, so that God guides your way. Nothing's greater than that which created us, and my God is the only thing that's greater than me. So I ask him for his wisdom constantly.
So now, Stephanie, these are notices that an individual can create?
Yes.
And serve to their legislator? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, they can serve them to their county clerk, their commissioners, their city council, their mayors, their state legislators, the Supreme Court justices.
So what if they're ignored? What if the official ignores the notice?
It stands as is. You submit your lawful notice. If they don't get back with you, whether they do or not, you submit your affidavit. You've created then that court of record with those documents. What you choose to do with that, if they've ignored it, is then the next step in the process. You could file a suit saying, hey, there's been a breach of contract here.
Has this been done to your knowledge?
Yes. It has. There are individuals who have been submitting lawful notices for years. Some have worked, some have not. Some work and you don't know they do. A lot of times what we've heard with these lawful notices is, especially there was a group in Arizona, and I think they were the affidavit mamas, they called themselves, and they used it in their school board. And they had people come after them then. Well, they filed these lawful notices. And what happened was they didn't see anything at the school board level except a complete halt of all of these individuals from the federal level coming after them. So there are things that happen. Yes. You want me to stop sharing?
We're out of time on this. We're out of time on this one, but would you be willing to come back and do a part 3 and tell us about what has happened to some of these notices and what the results were?
Sure.
I think this would be great for people to see how this actually played out in some cases. So would you be willing to come back and do a part 3 for us?
Sure. Yes. Yep.
All right. Well, Stephanie, this has been very, very interesting. I just, my hat's off to you on your research and your dedication to finding answers here. So I hope our viewers appreciate this. And I want to thank you for coming on and sharing this with us again. And look forward to part 3 with you. All right.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I can't wait to see part 3. I tell you, I can't wait.
She's a very very articulate and well-researched young lady. We need more people like this. We really do. We need more people like
Well,
this.
I'll tell you, Ken, since I did this, I've put her in contact with a few other people that, especially one person that I know that had gotten involved in these lawful notices. So there are other people in Indiana, I know for sure, that are working on this, that are involved in this concept. So I'm sure we're going to be coming up with a part 3 here.
I think her reference to obviously results of this with the Arizona application there. I think that's really interesting in the fact that I think so many of these lawful notices could be used throughout our state and throughout the country, basically, on these school boards and these schools that just refuse to recognize the people whose children are attending that school. So very well done. She's an articulate lady.
Yeah. It's going to be good. It's going to be good.
Very good.
All right. Well, let's move on here. Just want to close out here and let everybody know the next thing coming up on COS Indiana Live is our roundtable, which is coming up on October 28th, a week from tonight. And the topic that we're going to be talking about is the Bill of Rights. Don't you dare. And we're referring to things that are forbidden in our government. So it's going to be very interesting. And John's already getting us prepared to discuss this on the 28th. So that's coming up on the 28th. Now, coming up then following the 28th would be our broadcast on November 4th. And that's the night before something happening on November 5th. I can't think. Do you know what that might be? Anyway.
Maybe it's a full moon or something. I don't know. I don't know.
It could be something like that. But I think what we're going to do on November 4th is we're going to continue with Larry Brock, Lieutenant Colonel Larry Brock. And if we have time, we might. I've recorded some interviews with a couple young COS leaders. We'll try and maybe work those in too. But I want to try and get. We just may do part 2 and 3 of Larry Brock on November 4th. I want to get his in before the election because he's very focused on the election, what happened in the election.
Sure.
With regard to what happens to the January 6th people. So we may just devote the whole, if necessary, the whole broadcast to part 2 and 3 of Larry Brock. We'll see. We'll see how this works out. Sure. So that's what we got headed in the near future, Ken. Always want to mention anybody that has any comments or questions about our broadcast this evening, drop us an email to raiseyourvoice@gmail.com. raiseyourvoicecos@gmail.com, I should say. Mm-hmm. So hopefully everyone, I hope, enjoyed our broadcast this evening. I thought we had a lot of recordings. As you notice, we're doing more and more recordings, and certainly Ken knows that because he has to do all the editing, folks, to bring these to you, and he does a great job doing that.
I know it's sometimes it's difficult to get people to actually set aside the live time, and it's nice to get the live. Obviously, we want to try and get as many live people on as we can. But I agree. Sometimes we've got to go to the recording side of things to get people's opinions and their voice heard. So
yes, and then we have a greater flexibility as to when we can present those to you.
Sure enough.
So, but I think hopefully everyone found the ones that we presented and brought to you this evening is very interesting. So, listen, we'll close out our broadcast like we normally do with an episode from John Ackerman on COS basics, and we'll let that play, and then Ken and I will sign off for the evening. So, Ken, you have a good evening.
You too, sir.
And thanks for everything. And folks, we will see you on Monday, October 28th for the roundtable. So let's go to John Ackerman right now, Ken.
Vote early.
Yeah.
John Ackerman for Convention of States, Indiana. Continuing the series on COS basics, Convention of States basics, and continuing to bust myths. This myth is that holding an Article 5 convention is unprecedented. They say that it's never been done, so we should never do it. That sounds very progressive to me, doesn't it? It is kind of funny that it's the progressives who are opposed to the convention. And this myth is that it's never been done. It's unprecedented. But here's the fact. The clear precedent has been established. Read your history. Since 1787, the year of the Constitutional Convention, no less than 33 interstate conventions have been held in the United States. Get that. 33, almost 3 dozen interstate conventions have been held in the United States. Each one had a specific topic or meeting agenda. There's a clear standard for how these meetings work. Just because there hasn't been one in my lifetime or your lifetime doesn't mean it's never been done. It has been done 33 times. At interstate conventions, voting is always done by individual states. Each state has one vote. Regardless of the population or the number of delegates the state chooses to send, each state gets one vote. That's why it's a convention of states, not a convention of delegates. States, there's 50 of them, and it would take 26, a simple majority, voting in the affirmative to pass a proposed amendment and send it on to the state legislatures for ratification. So the myth that holding an Article 5 convention is unprecedented, busted.